Welcome, everybody. Today's episode, we were thinking we could do a fun trade deadline recap. There's a lot of pretty big moves today and in the last few weeks that are going to be a big difference maker down the stretch here for some contending teams, especially in the NL. A lot of teams picking up steam here, making some moves, trying to compete with each other. So today we'll have Gamma on as our guest and kind of review some of the trades. What's going on, buddy?
Not much. This is definitely one of my favorite days throughout the league. TLG never disappoints in the trade deadline, so I'm very excited to dive in. And again, within an hour, the league landscape can change. That's what I love about it.
Yeah, it's pretty ballsy moves went on today. I was checking at work when most of the big ones are happening every half an hour, so I'd pull up my phone and was like, ooh, geez, just some big, a lot of people involved in the trades too. A lot of like 5 for 2 and 6 for 3. So some big ones to talk about here. So we'll jump right into it. One of the early ones I noticed that was a big one was the Detroit Tigers traded Drew Rasmussen, who's having an absolute monster season. We talked about him in the my power rankings video I did yesterday. The dude's striking out 36% of guys, and he has a 2.1 FIP and is on pace for over 2 WAR as a relief pitcher, one of the best relief pitcher seasons in baseball. So he is on his way to Baltimore. As Baltimore, if you guys haven't noticed, is flying up. They're number 2 in the entire power rankings, the entire league. Last time I checked, I knew they were doing pretty well. I didn't realize they're so good this year. So Baltimore having those young pitchers, Crispin and Rocker and Spar, fearsome 3 guys there, all young, picking up big time relievers, so that could really help in their playoff push. In return, they got a couple young players back going to Detroit. Eldonis here, the young 25-year-old lefty, and Bradbury there, 24-year-old. So a couple just young arms going back. Big time pickup for Baltimore there. What do you think of Rasmussen? Kind of overperforming his ratings, or is he the beast he's been performing to?
Oh, I'm a big fan of Rasmussen too. He has 2 elite pitches in the fastball and slider, and then 2 other good pitches. And coming out of the bullpen with that stuff, that I think that could make a big difference for one of the best stories of the year is Baltimore. I think this year's GM of the year race is gonna be one of the toughest in league history. There's so many people you could make a case for, including Brian. Looking at it from the Detroit side, to me, the big prize for them is Eldonis. I really like his profile. Bradbury, I think, he's interesting, but I think Eldonis could really be a great lefty out of the pen as soon as next year or even this year. I just really like his profile and I like how he's also as good against lefties as he is against righties too. That's super valuable.
Yeah, you can never have enough good lefty pitchers. Detroit there, getting rid of some salary, getting some young arms. The way to do it when you're doing a little bit of a rebuild. So next up, I know it's more of a trade episode, but I will say, as I'm looking here on this major transaction log, heartbroken to see my boy Bobby Gary, one of my favorite players from the draft in 2026, 5th overall pick, an absolute freaky lefty. Just got called up to the majors, had 3 innings in the majors, and blows his arm out. 13 months torn rotator cuff. That's a big sting there. You hate to see it.
Yeah, it's never fun when you lose some young talent.
And next up, all right, so the big next trade here we got scrolling down here is a big one. We have Pittsburgh Pirates making moves like always. Alex, the trade demon. He's traded an aging Albert Abreu who's lost quite a bit of ratings, but his ratings were so high. It was like kind of like LeBron losing 40% of his skill, and it pretty much still puts him as like a top 20, top 50 pitcher kind of thing. The dude is only 31 years old. He still has 70 fastball, 99 miles an hour. Not the control he used to have, but still able to produce at a decent level. So he's on the move. He has a player opt out after this year, and then he has a $24 and $26 million player option. So really interesting contract there. That'll be interesting to see what happens there. They traded my old guy Bako Kang, who was a big time Asian import coming over from South Korea. Hasn't been able to produce super well at the major league level since he came over up to his ratings. He's just been a low bat pip guy. He can't seem to hit for up to that 55 contact and avoid K ratings, because I figured he would with that nice athleticism, nice little pop in his bat, but he hasn't been able to play at a high level over here. Hasn't been atrocious this year, but he's underperformed a little bit, but he's got a really talented skill set. A lot of high ratings there. He has a potential, you'd think, to do like a 2-3 WAR outfielder. The big part is Leo Vanny Rodriguez, who I just ranked as the number 3 reliever in all baseball. The guy constantly puts over 2 WAR and sub-1 whips, an absolute demon in the pen there with over 30% strikeout percentage every year. Guys barely hit 200 off him. Huge high-impact reliever. So that's 3 really high-rated players going over. Next up, we have Zach Davis in the same trade, all going over to Cleveland. Zach Davis, a 21-year-old. He was drafted in the 3rd round by Pittsburgh in 2024, as you can see on my screen here. 4 really good pitches, 95 mile an hour, super high mentals. Really nice ratings there for a 21-year-old. And the big prize of the young guys, prospect-wise, was Ed Davis. Ed Davis was a first-round pick, super advanced college guy with 5 pitches, 98 miles an hour, has 60 currents in 2 of the 3 categories, and so he looks fully major league ready. He got called up for Pittsburgh for just a couple games out of the pen there, but he's like just ready to play in the majors right away here, it looks like. So that's a lot of assets going to Cleveland, and in return, we got Alex Bregman going back to Pittsburgh with his monster bat, 65 contacts, 60 power, 70 eye, 60 avoid, plus defense at first base. Dude is just a monster offensively, and his contract is huge. He's got 25% retainment, which is about, I guess, 7-8 million a year out of the 30 million. He's got 4 years left on his deal, 3 after this year, but he has a player opt out after next year potentially. I don't know if he'll take that, but that's a lot of money after that, so he probably will opt in. But really interesting trade. What are your kind of first reactions on the trade?
Well, so Bregman is a stud, which is like hands down. But I really love the package that Cleveland got back for him. My scout's very high on Zach Davis. I think he can be a really good pitcher. And as you were saying about Ed Davis, he looks like he could be like potentially an elite arm out of the pen or in your staff if you wanted. And I think he makes an impact. So I really like what Cleveland did in this trade. I like Kang a lot. I think maybe change of scenery could do him some good. And then Abreu, yeah, he's taking a hit, but like if you get him with a good catcher, I think he could bounce back a little bit with the 40 control.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So I'm just doing some math now. So Abreu makes 13 million, and then he probably won't opt out because he was injured last year, and then he's only on pace for about 1 more this season. So I'd imagine he'll hold on to the 24, 26, but you never know. So if he does, that's 24 for next year. And then Bako Kang is making 11 million next year, but he's retained 50%. So I guess you would have it's almost about 30 million there between those two guys. And Leonardo Rodriguez has a huge arbitration estimate. Oh no, sorry, that was last year. So he's actually gonna have to get extended or hit free agency and be one of the biggest names on free agency because he's a big time talent pitching wise. So money wise, it looks like it evened out because Bregman at 25% retained is in the low 20s. So Pittsburgh taking on about 100 million for Bregman, 25 a year for about, or 22 a year, maybe closer to 80, 85 million over the 4 years. And then that's a pretty big time bat. So for his age 33, 34, 35, 36 seasons. And then you have, so yeah, you kind of given up a couple guys that haven't been living up to it, Abreu and Kang, this year as much. So you're getting an elite player back, but you had to give up 2 really nice young arms to make that happen. So yeah, really interesting trade. A lot of factors go into that. I'd keep a close eye on Cleveland, see if they can extend Rodriguez. That guy's a beast in the bullpen there. And I think he could even be like a starter on a low pitch count with 35 stamina. I think he could get away with like an 18 batter limit. Will be interesting to see how he looks in the new game. Next up, we have Craig Kimbrel. He has been on the move so many times. I'll let you talk about this trade while I count how many teams he's been on. Craig Kimbrel, oh my God. He's been moved around so many times in TLG. I can't even keep track. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. He is on his 12th team in 7 years just in TLG. That is not including anything from 2010 to 2019. Unbelievable. And he was on 5
He's
teams.
He's a hired gun. He's a hired gun. That's what I love about him. I think Owen paid a pretty good price. Like Castillo, he'd be interesting if his movement wasn't so low. But like, so if he gets a TCR there, maybe he becomes nasty. But like, I don't think that Owen's gonna lose any sleep letting him go. And then Ruben is a young, solid-looking guy, but I think for what the Angels needed, this is a fair price to pay, and I think Kimbrel is an interesting addition. I mean, he did well. I forget if that was last year or 2 years ago for Arizona, so he's got a warm part of my heart.
Yeah, nice little, just a quiet little $3 million contract. That was pretty nice pickup by Miami in the offseason. They made some nice moves, bringing in some good vets. Uh, and yeah, I agree with that. I think kind of good move on both parts. So you don't get those super high end prospects, but also it's just kind of like the lottery thing, right? Like sometimes those prospects don't look super good, but if you look, there's not too many 19-year-old outfielders that have 40 current contact, 35 current power. Like that's almost just a little bit older than a high school guy in the draft, and guys like that kind of go decently high, right, when they're super advanced currents with some nice athleticism. So sometimes, yeah, a guy like that just develops a lot more than you think, and you look back on trades like this 4 years down the road, and all of a sudden you have like a 3-WAR right fielder, and you're like, oh damn, that guy.
Yeah,
Kind of forget about that. You just got him for a random reliever rental, but yeah, you got to buy some lottery
that's
tickets to
true.
win the lottery sometimes. So next
And
time,
if Castillo also gets like a movement bump, he's looking really interesting with the control and stuff combo with his 3 pitches that he has.
yeah, I totally agree with that because essentially, with if he had 50 or 55 movement, that would be like a top 100 prospect. Just missing that one big area with the movement. So yeah, it's like you said, a
Yeah.
really nice profile other than the movement there. All right, what do we got next? Next up, we have Minnesota has got a really young arm here, a lefty, 16 years old, crazy, crazy ceiling. One of the rawest prospects in the entire game. This guy has crazy low currents, crazy high ceiling. Just a very, very interesting. I'd love to these kind of trades or this like super, super lottery ticket here.
Yeah.
60 potentials with 75 potential curveball. 16 years old, has some nice high current or sorry pitch potentials with the high hold. A lot of ceiling here. We just never know how these young guys are going to turn out. They're so far away. So really interesting trade. Getting a super high ceiling guy for a guy like Kieboom, who's had a huge
It was
season.
like a very good player, very good player. I admire Peter's balls for that trade because a young pitcher like that, there's a lot of flame out potential. But looking at his farm and how he develops prospects, I trust he knows what he's doing. So I wouldn't be surprised in like 4 years if this guy's a top 15 prospect, or if he's out of the league. You never know. It's such a he's like a kid. He's a kid. He's 16. He can't even like buy cigarettes.
I'm glad you made that point. It's a really good point about Peter. He's done a really good job. He seems to really target those instead of going for those 2, 3 multiple like lower end prospects. He seems to really enjoy going for that like those 1-for-1 trades. He did the same thing with the Mets when he traded Barrios. He got that really high end center fielder who ended up being number 2 prospect in all baseball. So I think he definitely knows what he's looking for, and that ceiling on that pitcher is pretty high. So as you said, 16, that's crazy. Like he wouldn't even be in the high school draft for 2 years if he was an American. So it's just crazy sometimes how young, like you said, those Dominican kids are, and it's just be really interesting to see if he develops into a prospect. But yeah, more on Kieboom. The dude is just having a crazy year, probably one of the best years of all the third basemen in baseball. He's on pace for 3.8 WAR. Dude's hitting over 300 for the whole season. He's only striking out 14% of the time, and he's playing plus defense. So just a crazy, crazy season out of him. Really good fit too in Camden Yards there. Got a big power
Yeah.
righty bat there. The dude has a chance to put up a bunch of home runs.
Yeah, Orioles are gonna be an interesting team in the postseason. They have a pretty good lineup, and like I think their pitching's a little underrated. I like some of the talent that they have, and I think they could potentially be a dark horse in the AL this year.
And yeah, as we're talking about that, I'm just thinking here, looking at their roster, I love that trade even more the more thought I put into it because that was a monster black hole they had at third base this year. Austin Martin is just not performing. The dude just doesn't have any power, but he also isn't a huge contact guy, and he's a pretty average defender. So that was a massive upgrade at third base when you figure that they already have one of the best second basemen in all baseball, Gilorm, and they have
I
one of the
miss him.
best shortstops. And yeah, he was a killer for you. And one of the best shortstops in baseball, Eduardo Garcia, is just a freak defensively, having a little bit of a down year compared to last year's like 4.5 WAR season. But so yeah, and then you have Figueroa at DH, and then the outfield you got the Gold Glove center fielder there. So that's a monster pickup there. That makes that lineup a lot better from Austin Martin, the big upgrade there.
And one last thing I want to say is like Brian does a very good job, I think, of like finding and developing a farm, but also he's willing to let go of like some high upside prospects to improve his team now, and it seems to be really working out for him. Like a lot of his moves where he's giving up prospects seem to put him in a spot where he can actually maybe challenge Boston in a few years. So I really like what he's doing in Baltimore.
Yeah, like you saying that is just a crazy idea from where we were 4 years ago and how bad of a situation Baltimore starts off with. It's pretty much Adley and nothing. And well, they have some prospects like Grayson Rodriguez who didn't turn out and stuff, but yeah, and that's with some bad luck. Like Dylan Lesko was a really nice pick by him, and had some bad luck with him not developing into a star. Can you imagine he was like a 6 WAR starter, and they had him, Rocker, and Crispin and Spar all in the same rotation?
All right.
Would have been nasty.
And hey, and my boy Master Donato too. Don't forget him.
All right, next up we have another trade from Pittsburgh. Alex traded a young arm, and he got in return. So we'll talk about the arm for Dome is a 22-year-old with 70 stuff, 101 mile an hour fastball, 75 rated fastball. I've never heard of the school Varda Man. Have you ever heard of that school, Varda Man?
I have not heard of Vardaman.
The dude, small school college, I guess. The guy has crazy good mentals, dominating this year in AAA. He has 20 innings pitched, had a pretty good season in AA and AAA combined, striking out a ton of batters, only letting up 4.4 hits per nine in AAA, and looks like a high impact bullpen arm. So he traded him. And in return, you got another more developed veteran bullpen arm in Alex Reyes, a guy who at one point was the number one prospect in all baseball in real life for St. Louis, and just had a lot of arm injuries over the year, kind of like Anderson Espinoza. Both those guys just really struggled with staying healthy. So he's a wrecked, got wrecked injury rating now, but when he plays, he's really good. He's got 4 crazy good pitches and throws the ball insanely hard. And he was the number one prospect in baseball for a reason. He's got a lot of tools.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great deal for both teams. Alex definitely has like some cap guru in his front office with all the trades and like retaining and cash that he gets. Like the guy is a wizard when it comes to manipulating the cap. I am envious of his ability, and I think what Minnesota got, like this guy could probably be their closer tomorrow, and I really think that's a great. He's going to be a great arm for them in the future. I'm really excited to see what Minnesota does in the next 2 years.
Yeah, they're picking up a lot of pieces, and they already had a pretty loaded farm. Just adding to it. And what I did mention, I forgot to mention that Pittsburgh also, like you said, they're always sneaky with those trades. Not only did they get a couple million back to balance out the trade, but they got a nice young lottery ticket arm there, Greg Hopkins, 19-year-old with a super high ceiling. Got 3 good pitches, 60, 50, 50 potentials, 40, 45, 60. So just a nice finesse, high control, high school arm. And just guys like that, you'd forget about them for a couple years in rookie ball, and next thing you know, you're 3 years down the line, and all of a sudden they're like a nice pitching prospect. So just got to collect those as many good young arms as you can. Sometimes those guys turn into studs, so who knows. Next up, we have another Pittsburgh trade, ladies and gentlemen. This
is a big one.
Yeah, this was a big one. So EP Reese is one of the best offensively rated players in TLG. The guy's got 60 contact, 80 eye. The guy's walking 14% of the time, 3 years in a row, and he's only striking out single digits the last 2 years. About a 200 ISO last year. It's down to 160 this year. The guy had 39 stolen bases and led the AL in 2025. Is just a demon with his approach and speed combination. Can play an average left field defense. Crazy advanced approach. One of the best approaches in all baseball next to Soto and a few top names. In return, Pittsburgh gave up. So they gave up Semler to get him. Semler had remember talking about him before the draft. Semler had the best eye I've ever seen in the history of TLG drafts. If you look at his scouting report, that was the guy in the draft that had a 50-65 eye or 50-60-70 eye at the draft. And then as soon as he drafted him, it instantly went up 10 current from 50 to 60. And then it went up another 15 current in the same year. So it went from 50 in 2025, it was 60 in 2026, and by the end of 2026, it was a current of 75. So just a ridiculous eye with some gap power, defense, and speed. That's a lot of tools. Guy just doesn't hit the ball super hard. He doesn't have super high contact or home run power, but he has a crazy approach, some gap power and athleticism. A lot of shit to like there. And then also they gave up a really nice arm. The Voodoo get John Keck in return. Looking where Joe, late first round pick in 2026 from Pittsburgh, and he signed for $5.5 million. And he has 3 really good pitches, throws the ball really hard. That's a really high ceiling guy. So those are 2 really nice prospects going back for Reese.
Yeah, I think it's a trade that makes a lot of sense for both teams. Kansas City has a lot of outfield talent in their system and in their major league level, so Reese is getting, he's getting close to end of arbitration, so might as well try to maximize the value now before he has a year left. So I really like the package they got, especially Joe, the pitcher. Reese, I was in on Reese, to be honest, but I couldn't pull the trigger because my trainer sucks so much, and the fragile injury tag just scared me off. So I was like, as soon as I get him, he's out for 5 weeks. But I think in Pittsburgh, this is like a big addition. This is not like I'm trying to think of like a real life equivalent, not same type of player, but this is like Manny going to the Dodgers kind of impact. Like I think this is a serious bat going to a great lineup. Same with Bregman. Like Pittsburgh's lineup just got a lot scarier, and it was already scary to begin with.
Yeah, I think you're totally right about that. I think I'm thinking along the same lines there. I always think about when you have a guy with such a good approach like that. I always think of kind of like the Steve Nash effect, where it makes everybody else around them better. You've got a guy that has
Oh, for
80 and
sure.
it's taking almost like 4.5 pitches per plate appearance. It just makes the job so much tougher on the opposing pitcher because then it's almost sample size thing. It does know like you don't notice 1 or 2 pitches per game if it's like your average game, but over the course of like a playoff series, it's just such a hard at bat. Like Reese, essentially, like I said earlier, would be one of the hardest at bats in all baseball. Every time he's going to grind out like 5, 6 pitches and just get you like full counts and stuff. So when you're in a playoff series to Pittsburgh that already has a pretty good lineup, a lot of good players there, just brings such a hard at bat. So like, and I think he also probably really valued him a lot because Pittsburgh's obviously got a small payroll. And I was thinking Reese probably had 5 years of service time by now, but he is only at 3. So that gives a couple arbitration years left over actually for Pittsburgh to give some pretty cheap contract. Like having a guy with that good of a bat for only $5 million next year arbitration estimate is pretty nasty. So I think that was probably another reason Pittsburgh gave up such good prospects, is they really valued Reese as pretty low cost over the next couple of years. So he won't be super expensive for another 2 years. So that was a nice. Yeah, nice pickup, but a really nice return also in the Voodoo. Those are some really high end prospects going back. Semler and
Oh, definitely.
Joe there, both really good ratings. Next up, we start with St. Louis. They have 2 trades in a row here on my list. Monster trades. Do you want to talk about this one while I get a drink of water?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, it looks like it's just two parts of the same trade. So, I mean, the big package that's going to St. Louis is my old guy, Quincy McAfee, which is one of the best bats by rating, but he still hasn't really, I feel like, completely lived up to his potential. He's had some very good years, but it always leaves you wanting more. I guess his best year was probably last year when he went over to Detroit and hit 27 home runs and close to 300. But look at his ratings; he should be a higher 300 average and like 40 home runs. But maybe with this new lineup, he will live up to that. And I really do I love what St. Louis is doing. They've built a monster team, and this is just them trying to go and just put them over the top. I really like how they're set up for this year and next year. I think Quincy's just going to come in that lineup and he's just going to mash right next to. I wonder where he hits them. Where do you think Quincy will bat in the lineup with St. Louis? Like,
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm just going to look at it quickly now. I think Poisson's definitely going to be the 2 or 3 hitter. Abrams,
yeah,
I'd imagine you bat Quincy second and move Miranda down a little bit, so you get more guys on base from Miranda with a 75 power. But then you have Riley Green, so yeah, I'd imagine maybe you hit Quincy second with his good approach, and then Green Green fourth after Poisson, and then hit Miranda fifth or something like that. That's a deadly
I,
lineup.
I have to be honest too. I did not look at all the return that Detroit's got yet because I was just so shocked that Quincy was getting moved at the deadline because that deal came out of nowhere.
Yeah, so Riley Green too. Oh, those like they're so loaded now, that lineup. Um, it's just so nasty. Those are both 70 contact guys going into an already first place team in a tough NL. That team is just going to be horrifying to play against. The top prospect in the trade, I think, was Lozano here. So Bob Lozano, the dude's 6'4", was the number one prospect in Detroit's system, or sorry, St. Louis system. The guy has 55, 65 stuff, like explosive stuff with 80 stamina on 3 really good pitches. The guy has a really nice profile. That guy definitely could step in and probably be major league ready at some point next season. If he could get jumped from 40 to 45 or 50 control, I think he could easily give you 3 WAR in the majors as soon as next year. Big time talent there. So that was the main piece there. Griggs was another one of those really nice advanced lefty arms with a little bit lower movement. But in Detroit, that doesn't kill you as much. So that was kind of a nice fit there. What else we got here in this trade? And the other return is Bobby Bissett. Bobby Bissett is a guy I actually traded to St. Louis back in the day. It's part of the trade for them to take on Michael Baez's contract because he had a season-ending injury, and he's got a 75 fastball and throws 100 miles an hour, so you can never have enough of those guys. Nice explosive arm there. Actually has some starter potential. And then in the other part of the trade, I think we got Logan Ott was another piece. That was another advanced lefty with low movement. So he's really targeting those lefties with high control, finesse type lefties. And if he can get movement jumps in any of these guys, they should be really solid. So you're just getting a lot of arms in return there, and they're all under team control for a bunch of years. So Detroit, what did they get between all these trades? Like 6 young prospect arms, pretty awesome. And then they got one good middle infielder.
A whole rotation potentially.
Yeah,
so that'd be great if their whole rotation would just be based off this one trade, like in 2 years.
Yeah,
like the Herschel Walker trade.
Trot all 5-year O linemen out there. Love it.
Yeah,
and that's your guy too. That Aguilar guy. I guess he was in your system there, and you traded him the middle infielder there. That went to St. Louis a couple years ago for Austin Hedges.
Oh, okay, all right, old friend. Hey, Luis Aguilar, he's good in my book. Then I'm wishing him all the best for bringing me Hedges.
Love it. 50 power middle infielder. So a bunch of nice, solid young pieces. A couple big time stars. I think Detroit was probably not ready to pay Riley Greene like at least $25 million a year. I'd imagine that guy's got. He's only got 4 years of service time. Already has a $15 million estimate next year. Probably jump to close to 22, 23 the year after that. And then so if you're going to extend him, he's going to be like a $200 million guy maybe. So. He has high greed too, which is really painful for that. The high loyalty also, so maybe they come balance each other out. I know the loyalty makes guys more willing to re-sign for lower, but the high greed, I can't see him being very cheap.
Yeah.
That's a nice pickup for St. Louis.
That's 2 big additions.
Yeah, they got a lot of money too to re-sign him. A lot of free payroll there, so all their stars are young, like Pawson on good deals and stuff, and Torkelson. So they have a lot of free money. I think $55 million free budget last I looked, highest in baseball. So anyways, that onto your trade here. So I'll let you take the reins. You got a big-time arm here in Sean Poppen.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's no secret to anyone who's been following the Diamondbacks that our starting pitching is by far our Achilles heel. So I'm hoping, I mean, I don't think this fixes our pitching. We still have some holes, but I definitely think it's like putting some tape over it a little bit. I mean, I'm hoping in the playoffs when it's shorter and like I can go to my bullpen that Poppen can like steal a game or 2 in a series. I also like that I have him for next year as well, so it made me more willing to give up some of the prospects. I think the big prize in my mind is the 17-year-old left fielder Jose Sanchez, who's going to Minnesota. He looks like he's going to be like a very good hitter. He has 80 potential gap power, 60 contact, 50 home runs, 65 avoid K, and good personality. So I think he is going to be the big prize for Minnesota. Keller was salary filler. Davenport, he could be pretty good. His control is a little iffy, but if he develops that, he could be an ace or like a good 3 or 4 starter. And then Eddie Hanks, I think, is pretty much ready to be in the bullpen for Minnesota. They've really done a nice job getting some bullpen pieces this deadline, and I could see them in a few years having a dominant pen with all the additions they made.
Yeah, it's like 5 guys they picked up for the pen. That's wild.
Yeah.
Between all these trades. Yeah, Sanchez, my scout, even higher on him. I got 30-65 on his hit tool. So that, like you said, that's a pretty nasty offensive profile. Minnesota's just picked up so much. I'll have to make one big list with just their trades at the end of this. That's pretty impressive, all the moves they've been able to make. Next up, we have, and yeah, one thing you mentioned, like having the retainment too. So you're only going to pay Poppen about $22 million next year, which is still pretty high, but not quite as bad as 30. So he's probably worth it though. That guy's a killer profile. Next up, we have the Cleveland.
Off the books.
Oh yeah, you got the couple big names on there still, but you got the Trout's contract and Alvarez, but not a ton of other big names.
They're worth it though.
Oh, absolutely. All right, so another speaking of high salary, there we got Christian Yelich on the move in our next trade here. So Cleveland Guardians traded Norm Jones, who's like a AAA, was a top prospect back in the day, but kind of leveled out and couldn't quite make as much contact as they wanted. Still has some pretty toolsy, good defense, good leadership, and all that. 28-year-old Dylan Carlson, who's got crazy ratings, underperforming a little bit in Cleveland this year, only hitting 235. He's lost a little bit of his defense there. Oh no, sorry, I was just looking at the wrong ratings. He was set at infield there, but yeah, he's a pretty solid defensive rated guy. 55 range in the outfield, decent air. Still play a pretty good left field, and has a ability to play first base now. So Cleveland traded him up at first base, which is cool. So it gives him a little bit of positional versatility. Got some pretty nice ratings across the board there. High stealing, high speed. Just isn't quite playing up to it, but probably should perform a little bit better there in Milwaukee. And then they got a lefty in return too, Bobby Belmonte. Pretty high ceiling with, if you look at his pitches, pretty crazy. 70 fastball, 70 slider, 60 change. So really high rated pitches there. And then you got another nice young lefty starting pitcher, 3 good pitches, 50 potentials, pretty advanced there for a 20-year-old lefty, pretty beastly 40, 50, 40. I would imagine if that guy was in the draft as a college guy next year at 21 years old. With that profile, you'd probably take him as high as a second round, would you say? Maybe third rounder? That's pretty advanced.
No, yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Especially with the high movement potential. I like that.
Yeah, so I
Um,
think that looks like a nice college second, third round pick for sure. Maybe even higher if he develops a little more before the draft, if he was draft age. So all that going to back from the Cleveland Guardians over to Milwaukee for Christian Yelich, the big name going to Cleveland. He is going to replace Bregman, not the same position, but just a big veteran, super stud offensive player. Both kind of like average defenders now, Bregman and Yelich at their age. So you get rid of Bregman, but bring in a big time another former MVP and Christian Yelich, a guy that has had a monster career between Miami and Milwaukee. What's his career WAR at now? 66. So almost pretty much in the conversation for a Hall of Famer to 370 career home runs.
yeah, no, he's up there. I think this is a interesting trade for Cleveland. I really like what they've done this year. They've had a. I did not. I'll be honest. I did not see this year coming out of them, and they've really surprised me. And I really like the talent they built there. For Milwaukee, I really like Bobby Belmonte. That's the piece that intrigues me the most. If I had him personally, I would view him more as potentially a lefty multi-inning reliever. I think with the 2 pitches there, and I like the lefty aspect, I think he could make a pretty good impact coming out of the pen. If that's just me personally, though.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Those 2 pitches out of the pen, especially with the lefty with the slider, will just be a wipeout guy against opponents that bat left. Second round pick out of college, right from Texas there, really high second round pick, 37th overall. So that guy was, I'm trying to remember him in the draft. I'll have to look back at my rankings, but yeah, really nice, powerful arm there for sure. All right, so we have a bunch more trades here. We'll keep rolling here. So next up, we have the Angels getting. They got a pretty nice reliever there. The Angels had a really nice season going on. Have really cooled down as of late. So they bring in another, just like a nice lefty middle reliever there, and Corbin Clouse in return for a 22-year-old center fielder with 55 power. Just has very low contact and avoid K, but it's just giving up a nice little young prospect for just kind of like a middling reliever there. Hopefully help out the Angels bullpen a little bit. Next up, we have Seattle trading with Arizona again. There you are. I didn't
Yeah,
notice he gave up Paletta in that trade. So yeah, if you want to talk about that trade for a second.
yeah. Toledo was definitely the hardest piece for me to part. I think he's going to be a great bench piece. Like I think he's just because he can play so many possessions, he can come off and be a pinch runner. His contact's a little bit low, but like if that gets bumped up, he becomes a really interesting player. But like I saw him, if he was still in my system, he was gonna be on my bench next year. So I'm very excited about Paletta. I think that's a big pickup, and I was okay to get rid of him because I'm very high on Smith. He's just a good, solid hitter, nothing special, but his defense is really what attracts me to him. I just really love the range and the shortstop defense, and I think it's most likely Albies is going to be gone next year at third base, so I'll probably move over one of my infielders, and I can never have enough middle infielders is my philosophy. So I'm very excited about bringing him in.
Yeah, it's a pretty elite defensive profile. About the 5th or 6th best defensive shortstop ratings wise behind Andrelton, Leto, a couple other guys there at the top. Really elite, right across the board there with everything. Pretty nasty. Probably just right behind Reyes and some of those 80 range guys, but insane defender. So you also was it giving up Gutierrez there? Gutierrez has some very low control, but if he can bump that back up, he has a pretty electric arm too, but not a super high end prospect. So it's a nice little trade on Seattle, giving up, and they're kind of rebuilding there, getting a nice little piece in Pauletta, who also is a spark plug too, which always helps. High work ethic can never go wrong with those guys. Next up, we have another trade. The Minnesota Twins, yet again. Is this going to be another reliever they're getting back? I haven't looked. No, there's a starter this
more
time.
like a starter, yeah.
This trade here, Jesus Sanchez. How does he say it in real life? Actually, I probably said that wrong. Jesus Sanchez. Yeah, he has.
Okay, so I'm here.
A tool. He has a toolsy profile. We've got the 65 outfield range. Defender there, super good profile. Had a really nice young career there in Miami. A couple nice 2-WAR, 1.5 WAR seasons there. 29-year-old going to Toronto, who's in the midst of battling super hard with Baltimore there for the second seed behind Baltimore in the East. There right now they're very set up nicely for that second wild card. So really nice. Another trade for Minnesota there, just getting yet another young arm for a veteran, just completing this rebuild. It's just loading up with prospects. Can't wait to look at their prospect list after this. They just got so many arms today. It's crazy.
Yeah, and he's got he's a interesting arm. He's nothing he's not going to overwhelm you, but the 60 control potential is nice. And then he's got 4 good pitches, which could that. As a end of the rotation guy, you'll definitely take that. His changeup does not look like it's going to develop at all. I have it as a 2020.
Same.
But a fastball, curveball, splitter, knuckle curve, all 50 to 55. That's a solid arm at the end of your pen, or at end of your rotation, or maybe a long relief kind of guy is how I see him.
Yeah.
Unless he gets some TCR.
Yeah, not bad at all. He's also had a lot of success in the minors too with nice season in low A and A ball this year, so pretty decent return there. Next up, we have the Giants. The Giants traded for the Gold Glove winning Evan White, who just had his power absolutely zapped in the Giants stadium there. It's impossible to hit home runs in that stadium. They're down 40%, I'm pretty sure. He had 24 home runs last year in 155 games. He has 0 this year in 46 games. So it's just it's just crazy how hard it is to hit home runs there. He lost a little bit of his power, but ratings wise, he still is the same as he had when he hit 24 home runs last year. So he goes to the home run heavy Washington Nationals Stadium. So he might fare quite a bit better there with some elite defense. Might not be a bad fit at all for Washington.
Yeah, and I really like the pitcher that Washington got. I think he's a really intriguing arm. He's a lefty, 22 years old, potential 60 stuff, 50 movement, 55 control. His changeup's already a 75 out of 75, and he's got a fastball 60-60. So he looks like he still needs some developing to go to be a starter, but if that never happens, he looks like he could still be a dynamic arm in the pen too. That's what I love about these guys who already have 2 pitches developed. If they don't work out as a starter, you can always just try them in the pen and hope for the best.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was trying to figure out that trade as we were talking about. So essentially, it was the Giants unloading Evan White's contract, which they're on the books for $11 million this year, and so it got it's pretty much fully retained by Seattle though. And then I imagine they'll buy him out. I don't think Washington's going to want to pay him $12 million next year. So essentially, he could be a useful piece though. But yeah, so they got a pretty good prospect in return. And it looks like the Giants pick up a veteran with 60 contacts, so it's really nice bench bat that can be a really nice pinch hitter for a playoff team there. So a really interesting trade from both sides, and a couple teams are still in the deep, and Washington's still in the running there. They're just barely out of that wild card there. Me and them are battling for that third wild card spot. So an interesting trade there. Really good arm in this next trade. We have Houston traded one of the best young relief pitching prospects in all baseball, Eric Dutton, over to the Atlanta Braves, and that was a big trade. We have another young arm going over the Braves, a 19-year-old. I hadn't looked at this one yet, so I'm just kind of flinging this on the spot. We got a lefty 19-year-old Montanez, who's got some really nice ratings across the board. Just missing that really good number 1 pitch. Doesn't have that explosive sinker fastball, but he has a really good knuckle curve and 3 pitches that are pretty solid. So really, really cool prospect there. That's a starting pitching prospect. Really high ceiling. Love that guy. And so they
Yeah.
also got a righty here, Tony Valdez. So a bunch of teenage pitchers here. Valdez is yet another one of those guys that we've talked about today that just doesn't have movement, but super advanced control and stuff with a bunch of good pitches.
Yeah, and I think Dutton could come up right now and make an impact in the NL East race. Like, he looks like I'm very familiar with him because I traded him to Houston in the Matt Manning trade, and he's just continued to progress. Like, he is looking like he could have been, if I held on to him, he'd probably be my best reliever, honestly, with the 75 potential movement and potential stuff in the 60 movement. So very interesting to see how he impacts the race this year with Atlanta. That's a big time pickup at the deadline.
Yeah, it's a weapon.
And I don't understand Houston and how they perform. They have to be the most unlucky team I've ever seen. Like, with all the talent they've had, and just I don't get why they aren't at the top of their division. I just think Brian might be cursed.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if that's a coaching thing or just, like you said, some bad luck. And yeah, it seems like he's got loaded rosters every single season and really struggled this last year and a half for whatever reason. I know he got hit pretty hard with pitching injuries over the years. Had a couple really unfortunate one for us. Forrest Whitley or whatever his name is there had a big one. He was a really promising young pitcher and kind of flamed out. But yeah, it seems like with how much talent they have, they should be better. They got a nice relief pitcher here who also could be a starter, and Alex Kendrick. And then they got the young center fielder in return from Atlanta, who had started most of the season in center field and had over 100 OPS plus as a center fielder, which is pretty solid with a nice athletic defensive profile. But so really, they're just getting a couple decent veterans there in return, but gave up some really nice arms. So I was a little confused with that one. I thought that maybe the Braves got a little better return there with how good Dutton is. So maybe Houston really values Pereira there or something and really needs a center fielder. But yeah, that one was a little interesting to me. Next up, we have the Pirates. The Pirates gave up a lefty arm, 25-year-old, explosive fastball, 99 mile per hour, 75 rated fastball, 50, 50, 45 across the board there for him. Pittsburgh gave up him to the Twins, and in return, the Twins gave the Pirates a. So this is almost exactly like their other trade. They made two just like this.
Yeah.
This trade also has just gives them a nice middle reliever there for their playoff push. A guy that's fully developed as a 32-year-old, has some nice experience. Played in the NL Central, maybe give him played on St. Louis last couple of years, so maybe give him some tips on their sign stealing signals. Maybe that's why they picked him up for the stretch run. Another good trade there. Pittsburgh and Minnesota linking up, and Minnesota collects yet another arm. And
yeah, I was about to say, just copy what I said about their last trade and go for this one. I'm not going to spend any more effort on a Minnesota Pittsburgh swap where they get like a young pitcher for a good bullpen piece.
Well, next up, funny enough, we have those teams coming up in the next two too. We'll go quickly those smaller trades here. Jazz Chisholm, who is not quite the star in TLG that he is in real life, looks like a must-see player in real life this year, especially. He's hitting a bunch of triples already. I've seen on Twitter. Explosive, fun player to watch. So he goes into Cleveland there, and in return, Cleveland sends former top 100 prospect Luis Angel. So Acuna's younger brother, for those that don't know, Braves superstar. It's his little brother there. So I don't know, it might be his cousin actually. I think it's his brother. So he was a top prospect and never quite developed the hit tool, but he has a really good approach. A couple things that stand out, but just a nice little easy middle infield swap there. Next up, we have Pittsburgh Pirates. Pittsburgh Pirates. This was an interesting one. Daniel Torres was a pretty nasty defender. He's actually on pace for a sneaky 1.5 WAR season with only 220 at bats. So that's a lot of value there as a defensive sub late in games. As you can see, he only has 34 starts, but 82 games played. So comes in at second base there for late innings and plays a really good defense and has actually hit the ball well above his ratings. Has a nice eye and is walking 11% of the time. So and has a really productive season there. So he's going to Cleveland to play second base there. And in return, Pittsburgh gets a young 20-year-old lefty arm that's not super high ceiling with the low movement and the low stuff, but just yet another arm. Pittsburgh likes to collect those young 18 to 20-year-old arms and just see kind of which ones develop.
Well, yeah, I like Cooper's profile because if you look at his development history, he's already had some success with developing. So if he continues to go on that path, maybe he gets a boost in the movement. And I like his pitch mix, and I feel like Pittsburgh just has an eye for this stuff. So anyone he likes, I automatically target in on.
Yeah, it's a good point. He's gone up a lot. He was barely a prospect at all at 30, 25, and 40 potentials, and he's gone up quite a bit. So that's a good point you made there. Could be something one day. Next up, we have a pretty big trade. This is one of the best relief pitchers in all of baseball. Zack Burdi has had some major injury problems over the years, but his 2022 season was one of the best relief seasons in TLG in the 7 years we've had. If you look way back on that, he had 1.31 FIP that season. He struck out 41% of guys. Guys are only hitting 140 off him. One of the most dominant relief pitcher seasons we've had. I thought he won reliever of the year that year, but I guess he didn't. But anyways, he's had some injury problems since. Still been pretty good. Never replicated that dominant season he had there, but pretty solid. Had a really good 2025, and then this year he went to Miami on a pretty sneaky deal there. Miami really loaded up with some nice veterans to make a run and really started off hot for the first few months and kind of fell off, but in the standings there. But Burdi is a really good. There's not too many pitchers in baseball that have 80, 55, 55 ratings. I'd imagine there's I can't think of any honestly, but he is really highly rated with 2 elite pitches and 2 mediocre pitches, and he has yet another dominant bullpen arm for Boston. They're loaded in the bullpen now. What'd you think of the return on him?
I think Boston got the better of this end, to be honest. My scout's not too crazy about Alvaro Casas or Casas. I don't know how you'd say his name. And so Okerholm is interesting. The movement again at 35 is not great, but if he can get that up, his pitch mix with this 80-80 curveball is very intriguing. But yeah, I think Boston just got the rich got richer, and the cash too. So I really like this deal for Boston.
Yeah, I think Pogi or whatever you pronounce his name there is actually pretty solid. I think he could be in the rotation next year for Miami. The guy has pitched in AAA and had a lot of success the last couple of years in Boston, and kind of blocked by their really good starting rotation there. So this is a guy that could actually give some nice innings there. So it's not too bad to kind of get a major league level player with a lot of service time available. And yeah, the other two guys are pretty low movement, but you also Casas is only 18 with some pretty nasty pitches and 80 holds, so it's just a nice little lottery ticket there. They also get that's quite a bit of money coming off the books for Miami there. Burdi's on a pretty big contract as a reliever, making 10, 10, and $10 million, so $30 million over the next 3 years. 2 more years on that contract, so it's a pretty high salary for Miami to get off the books there too. So you get him a couple of nice young arms there and get a bunch of money off the books. So makes sense for both sides. Also, if you want to just quickly, we won't go over all these trades from the last couple of weeks, but there's a few pre-trade deadline ones that we can just kind of highlight here. The big one mainly was the Dustin May and the Corbin Burnes trade. So I got Corbin Burnes. The last sim went over to from Cincinnati to Cleveland. So Burnes still has some really good ratings. He played on your team. He was on the end of that deal you signed him to. He's 50% retained by the Reds. So now Cleveland only has to pay him $9 million. He's got some really nice ratings still. Hasn't really dropped off much from when you signed that big deal.
Yeah, hold on. I'm just having a tough time finding the trade.
Sorry. It's just down. July 19th.
July 19th.
Just slow it down.
Oh, here we go. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, so he goes over to Cleveland. So Cleveland's picked up a few nice players for their playoff push. They fell a little bit behind the White Sox there, but they're still in the running for that wild card spot and not super far behind the White Sox now. So I think they made some moves where they can still be competitive.
Yeah, definitely. And I like Melendez in Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati could use a good captain in their locker room. So I think especially for all the young talent that's coming up in the next few years. And Jordan looks like another high. He looks like he's building some talented, high character guys. So I think it's only a moment of time before the Reds are on the rise.
Yeah, I think they're really underperforming this year, but they do have a lot of talent still. So I'm just hoping for that breakout season one of these years. Another trade, we have Dustin May, the former Los Angeles Dodgers great in the West there, bouncing teams. He went from the West to Pittsburgh, back to the Dodgers. Now he's on his way to division rival, the Giants. He has lost some of his explosiveness that he had with the stuff. He doesn't quite strike out as many guys he has in his age. He's changed a little bit, but he has gained a lot of control. So at this point in his career, he's more of a finesse guy. Still gets a lot of ground balls, though. Lost his changeup. He used to have like a 60 changeup, and it's all the way down to 35. So he's more of a three-pitch guy now. But yeah, like some guys, as they age, they just kind of change their profile a little bit. So not quite the explosive arm he was early in his career there, but he's still a nice innings eater that should be a good fit in the Giants stadium there, not give up many home runs and not give up many walks. So he should still be a nice impact starter. So they give up a couple nice young arm prospects for him in return. Mark Snead was actually a guy that played for me. Nice developed high school lefty that developed pretty decently, got really advanced ratings, just doesn't have an explosive arm, kind of a weak fastball and stuff rating, but really nice movement control going to the Dodgers there. So that's a good trade there for the San Francisco, trying to keep up with you there. You brought in Poppen, so I guess they figured you were right in the race with them, so maybe they had to match it and bring in a nice pitcher of their own.
Yeah, I mean, I think Dustin May is I think he nailed it. He's a great fit for that ballpark. It is just sad because there was a point in TLG where if you asked me if I could have any pitcher on my rotation, there's a good chance the answer might have been like 23-year-old Dustin May. He looked like he was going to be a stud and like just run the league, but then it's just, I mean, it's baseball and pitching. It's weird, guys fall off at the drop of a hat. So it's good that he's still useful at least.
Yeah, you're dead on with that. 65 stuff, 55 movement back then.
Yeah, he was just a big what if.
It's crazy too because Walker Buehler fell off so fast there for the Dodgers. They had both those young arms, and both those guys just falling off so much younger than they should. Both in their late 20s there, just going off quite a bit. But at least May's still holding on there. He still might have a couple nice years there. He's got 3 years left, 2.5 years left on his contract, so he could be a nice fit there in Giants for a couple seasons. So that will bring us to the end here. We nice little episode there. Probably talked for over 20 minutes. Went over a bunch of trades there. Pretty much, long story short, is just Minnesota picking up a lot of arms. A couple blockbusters there. The big blockbusters being Poppen, probably the biggest pitching name, switching sides going to your team. And then hitting-wise, we had Bregman switching sides over to Pittsburgh, going over the NL. And then the other big trade was EP Reese, I guess.
Reese.
Yeah,
Reese is a big one.
So both those guys going to Pittsburgh, Reese and Bregman. That's a huge addition to Pittsburgh.
And Quincy. We can't forget Quincy and Riley Greene.
Yeah, good point.
That's like the biggest one.
Yeah, that's an insane trade. St. Louis is going to be scary. They're already 66-39 before that trade, and they just added 270 contact, both 60-plus power. So to add those kind of bats to a lineup that already has an 80 contact Robert Puas and 65 contact CJ Abrams, so it essentially gives them their number 2 and 3 best contact bats, and that now gives them, this is scary. So they now have 5 guys that have over 65 power and a 60 power catcher behind that. So 5 monster home run power threats in that lineup now, in Carrier, Miranda, Poisson, the 2 new additions, Greene and Quincy.
Insane.
So scary matchup.
So I have one last question before you go, because I think GM of the year this year is going to be so tough. So just a little preview going into the year, like especially now that we had the trade deadline, everyone's made their big moves. Looking into it, where's your head at for GM of the year right now? There's like legitimately 7 names or 8 names. I think you could make a case for number 1.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think both Oakland and the Angels in the West have both made some awesome moves last year too. Oakland's been really patient. They hadn't made a lot of trades, but they've just slowly collected arms and built up and had a really good season. So they're in the running for sure.
It reminds me of like the early 2000 A's where they had like Hudson, Mulder, and Zito just like running shit. Like their rotation's insane, and it's perfect for that ballpark.
LeBron and those the big 2 there, and Pittman. Oh, it's so nasty. So I like that a lot.
To LeBron.
And then they got the Angels there got really nice season there. They started off so hot. I think getting caught by Oakland probably hurts his chances GM of the year. He was kind of running away with it there. He might have had like 110 wins. It looked like at one point he was dominating. And then, yeah, I think Cleveland's done a really good job. Cleveland turned around a mess. They had a really rough looking prospects a couple years ago, and they just made a ton of moves in this last year. So he'd probably be right at the top of the board for me. The guy you said earlier, Brian for Baltimore, has been awesome. And I don't like to penalize teams just because they've been good for so long. I think Alex and Tyler, Boston, Pittsburgh, every year they just seem to make such good moves. I know it's easy to say like, oh, they have high payrolls. Well, Boston's case and a lot of
Pittsburgh.
prospects.
I think Alex.
Yeah.
Alex has a case every year for like what he's turned Pittsburgh into is insane. The fact that they're like contenders every year is just hats off to him.
Especially losing Beaver too, with having two of the best, like probably the two best pitchers in baseball the last couple of years, in Abreu and Beaver, and having Beaver out for almost the whole year, and Abreu falling off like he did, and they're still right there with St. Louis, and it's exact, just more confirmation for what you just said of him definitely being up there. So yeah, all those guys, St. Louis making a huge move here, so I could totally see them dominating in these last 2 months and going and winning like 105 games. And then the Braves have had a monster season from Danny. Didn't really make a ton of moves, but yeah, you always got to watch out for the team with 645 win percentage. And then the NL West, those are my favorites because all three of you guys in the running right now just have made so many moves to improve your teams. I know Colorado has made a ton of moves more in the offseason than the trade deadline, picked up a lot of talent, just been dominant, built an awesome pitching staff, and then you got the two Giants and Diamondbacks. You guys both made a bunch of moves to improve your team and seem to always overperform there. You don't quite have as many stars as those other two, but the stars you have are so good that kind of carry it for you a little bit there. Trout, Napier, and them Hedges. So yeah, there's so many good options. I don't even know. I don't have a good answer for you. What are you thinking?
No, I mean, I'm all. So you've nailed you hit your head you hit like a lot of the guys I'm thinking of. David in Colorado's definitely done a great job because he's also built up a very good farm. Colorado's not going anywhere. They're gonna be a pain in the ass. I mean, so if I had to put like St. Louis is also another one to consider, especially after the deadline if they go on a run with this new lineup. That could like seal it for him because I do think people get like voters fatigue as much as they try to deny it. So I do think it's gonna be a fresh face, especially when there's so many cases for people.
Right.
I think this is tough. This is really tough.
It is.
My gut, just because I don't know, Baltimore coming in second in the AL, I didn't see. So I think right now for me, Brian, maybe, and then I don't think you said Danny didn't make many moves. I agree, but he made some pretty important moves. Like I think Jansen has been a huge addition to his team, so that definitely would get runs to it. But I think Brian or Owen right now would be my pick.
Yeah,
the Angels.
Yeah, I love those teams in the AL just playing so well. The Angels, Athletics, Guardians, and Orioles there all just seem to be doing so much better than they have in years past. Baltimore's like if you look at the team Baltimore's built, they're so nasty. Those pitchers I mentioned earlier, the big three, Crispin and Rocker and Spar there, and then just the lineup they built. Now that they brought in, love that move for Kieboom. I think that move is just one of my favorite moves of the entire day. Not giving up a ton for him, and he's such an impact guy. And that now it's one of the best infields in baseball. And you just have so many elite. You have elite defense in the middle of the field there, and then you get Kieboom on the corner with some nice contact there, and that team's just so nice now. Really, 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 really well put together team. So yeah, definitely with 40 games to go though, almost, or no, is it like 55 games to go still? A lot of time left to see who kind of separates himself from the pack.
Open.
Should be a good finish.
I'm excited.
So that'll be it for this episode.
Man,
that was a ton of fun, Gamma. I'm really glad you came on today. Big review of a lot of trades. That was kind of a long episode, but there was a lot of trades, so a lot to go over for anyone listening. Hope you stuck with it till the end, and that'll be it for this episode. Thanks again, Gamma.
All right, love you guys. Thank you.